Gentleman yields back.
Mr. Chairman,
For what purpose does the gentleman from Rhode Island seek recognition?
move to strike the last word.
Gentleman is recognized.
Mr. Jordan will not be surprised to hear that I oppose his amendment. I know he has tried a number of times to have a content moderation discussion, but this legislation does not involve content moderation. It's targeted at anti-competitive conduct in the digital economy. I understand that the ranking member has introduced legislation to address his concerns about this matter. That legislation has been referred to the Committee on Energy and Commerce. That is the appropriate venue for addressing these concerns. And again, this is about promoting competition online, which of course is the purpose of antitrust law broadly and the purpose of this statute, to prevent discriminatory behavior that favors the products or services of a covered platform, not about the content and content moderation. And again, there's a, pardon me? Yeah.
The gentleman yield
and
for a
with that,
question?
Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Will the gentleman yield for a question before yielding back?
Are we
Mr.
allowed to?
Cicilline?
Can
I don't
we
think the
respond?
chairman's recognized that.
Did the gentleman yield back?
Mr. Cicilline?
Gentleman yielded back.
Can
For what purpose does Mr. Bishop seek recognition?
you yield me some time? Thank you, Mr. I thank the gentleman. Well, I would just,
Gentleman is recognized.
thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just responding to the gentleman from Rhode Island, I think the gentlelady from California said there is a right of action. She just said that's in the bill. Now you're telling me that we can't do it. Looks like you did it in your own bill. That's what Ms. Lofgren just pointed out.
It's to
And then-
business users, Mr. Jordan.
Pardon?
Applies to business users in the bill.
Well, I know, and that I said that earlier. We want to extend it to individuals, and you're saying are you making a germane argument, or are you saying you're just opposed to it?
No, it's different. The bill prohibits it.
So you are making a germane
business
argument.
use. No, I'm not making. I'm just opposing your amendment.
Oh, okay, I got it. So I would have a question for the gentleman then. Do you support the idea of the amendment I offered? I don't know if it was today or yesterday, but the amendment I offered
Earlier.
definitely earlier, the taking away the liability protection. Do you or do any of the Democrats support the idea of allowing an explicit private right of action for an individual and taking away the liability protection that big tech currently enjoys? Do you guys support that idea? Because you keep saying no to it in this context. I want to know if there's any context that you'll support that, because certainly, again, the constituents I get the privilege of representing, they certainly like that concept.
Will the gentleman yield? I'm happy to answer.
Of course.
I can't remember precisely your proposal, but I'm certain that I share the view put forth by Mr. Raskin, that I think we need reform of Section 230. That's a matter that obviously is not within the jurisdiction of this committee, but it's something I believe in strongly. I would be delighted to work with you, and I know Mr. Raskin would as well, to think, and Ms. Lofgren, what the right contours of that are. Just don't think that this is the appropriate place to do it. But
And how about this, if I could, Mr.
Sure.
Chairman, reclaim my time. How about the second question? Do you support this amendment that in a different context? I know you don't support it in this context, but in a different context, do you support a private right of action if, in fact, an individual's content has been taken down for political reasons?
I've explained to you my position on your amendment. You're talking about revisions to the content moderation rules governed by Section 230. I think that requires reform. I just don't think that's appropriate in this bill. I don't think your amendment.
I know you don't. I get that. I know you don't think it's appropriate in this bill. Do you think it's appropriate in a different bill?
I told you, I think we need to reform Section 230.
I'm not talking about Section 230 here. I'm talking about explicit private right of action. We have two different ideas. One is to take away the liability protection they have. The other is to allow you to sue explicitly.
I'm happy to have that conversation after the markup and talk to you about it. I have no sort of fixed views on it. I think reform is necessary, and making sure those rights can be vindicated is an important part of the conversation.
I think it's Mr. Bishop's time, but if you can yield to the
Could
gentleman.
you yield for a question, because it's getting late and it's hard not to feel grumpy, honestly, but I think what's being suggested, or the question that the ranking member is asking, is whether essentially he's saying discriminates among similar situated businesses would be expanded to individuals who are
Yeah,
discriminated
exactly.
against.
Exactly.
And that's, I am opposed to that, but that's what the issue that he's raising.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Democrats have told us that we can't change the definition of covered platform, even though a week ago they changed the definition. They changed it in an effort to keep Microsoft out of the 4 companies that they want to have covered. Democrats told us that there's a burden shift for any mergers, and then they changed that and said, well, there's a burden shift for any mergers for the covered platforms unless they're merging with a company of 50 million or less. And Democrats said we have to give the FTC and DOJ more money, but we can't put any limits on how that money is spent. And then time and time again, they've said no to the most important question, in my judgment. I think probably the most important question, certainly for the Republican side of the aisle, and that is the censorship of speech, the restriction on speech, the limits placed on free speech, the content moderation that is done by these big companies. So I'm going to try one more time. This amendment explicitly creates a private right of action. The amendment would prohibit a covered platform from engaging in politically biased content moderation. Time and again, we've seen big tech stifle viewpoints that don't align with their political ideologies. And all too often, these viewpoints are conservative. If a person believes that they've been discriminated against by a qualifying company, they will be able to seek a remedy in federal court. If the person prevails, they will be able to recover actual damages, cost, and punitive damages. During the 2020 election, we saw big tech play politics under the guise of enforcing content moderation standards. Big tech is out to get conservatives, from elected officials to everyday Americans across the country. And this gives the average American a remedy. It's very similar to what the governor of Florida has done with the Florida legislature, empowering candidates, empowering people to bring causes of action when their content has been taken down, when it's been censored, when it's been restricted. That's all this amendment does. It seems straightforward. I hope that the majority will not once again say, oh, we can't deal with this. We can't deal with the most important issue when it comes to big tech companies, at least the most important issue I hear from my constituents. My guess is you all hear, and someone said this earlier, this whole thing, if it hasn't hit you yet, it's gonna hit everyone. So it seems to me, as I've said before, that this committee the Judiciary Committee should want to give American people an explicit private right of action when this kind of behavior happens to them on these platforms.
Would the
With that,
gentleman yield?
I'll yield to the lady, to the gentlelady from California.
It seems to me, and I will, we see this differently, and I will have an amendment that would cure the problem I'm about to point out. But I think your amendment is unnecessary because if you take a look at section 2A3
Page.
on the first page, you're in violation if you discriminate among similarly situated business users. So if you are doing content moderation for a particular entity, but not another, you're discriminating among the business users of the site. And because the remedy includes a private right of action for damages in the bill, you could sue under the bill without this amendment.
Yeah, I think our amendment's representing people too, not just business entities.
But an entity, for example, the Republican Party or Jim Jordan for Congress.
I appreciate that.
All of which you would have a private right of action
As a
to
political,
sue.
as a political entity.
Correct. And I thank the gentleman
But I'm
for
talking about as an
yielding.
individual as well.
I thank the gentleman for yielding.
You bet. I thank you.